Okay, good morning students. Today our topic is principles of object oriented programming. So what are the principles of object oriented programming? So the principles are classes, objects, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance and polymorphism. Now we can see about what is class, what is object, what is abstraction, what is encapsulation, what is inheritance and what is the polymorphism. First we see the what is class. So class is a blueprint from which we can create an object. So class is a blueprint or plan from which we can create an object. For example, consider a class to develop a house construction. So for example, to construct a house we need a blueprint or plan. So that is called a class. Based on the blueprint and plan we can construct any number of houses. That each house is called object. So a class is a blueprint or plan. So from the blueprint or plan we can develop any number of objects. So the collection of similar objects is called a class. For example, we are constructing number of the houses. The collection of all these houses are called simply a class. So a class is also defined as a user defined data type or a new data type. So a class contains data members and methods. So a class contains data members and methods. So the class does not consume any space. For example, consider a class student. So the class contains data members and methods. So consider a class student. So the student contains data members. What are the data members we have? Roll number, name, date of birth and marks. These are called the data members. So we have some methods in the class. That methods are student info, percentage and grade. So once we can create a class, we can develop any number of objects. So the collection of the similar objects is called a class. So this is the basic idea about the class. Once again I am repeating, what is class? Class is a blueprint to create a objects. So once we can create a blueprint, we can create any number of objects from the class. So example is, consider a class student. The student contains some data members and the class contains some methods. Next we can see what is object. Next, then object. So already in the previous session we discussed about the state and behavior. So what is state? The state simply specifies the attributes and the behavior specifies the what can be done on the attributes. So here an entity that has state and behavior is known as the object. So that means an object contains state and behavior. So that means an object contains some attributes and some methods. So for example, consider a person is an object. So every person has some attributes. What are the attributes? The name of the person, then the gender of the person, next city of the person. Similarly, each person has some behaviors like eat, study, play and sleep. So that means a person object has some state. The state specifies the name, city and gender. Similarly, a person object has some behaviors just like eat, study, play and sleep. So similarly, consider another object that is called a dog. Dog has also some states and some behavior. So what are the states of dog? The dog states are like color, name, breed and so on. So based on the object dog, what are the behaviors? So the dog waggling the tail, barking and eating. So these are some of the behavior of the dog. So here an object is also called as instance of the class. Already I told, once we create a class, we can create any number of objects. That's why an object is also defined as an instance of the class. The objects can consume some space in the memory. The class cannot consume any space in memory, but when we create an object, it will consume some space in memory. So that means once we can create a class, we can create any number of objects. So already I told you example. Suppose I will take another example. Suppose you want to manufacture a pen. So to manufacture a pen, we can take a blueprint or plan of the pen, how the caps look like. So based on that one, we can create a blueprint. So after completion of the blueprint, we can manufacture any number of pens based on the blueprint. So that manufacturing pens are called each one is called the object. So this is the basic idea about classes and objects. Next, we can see what is abstraction. So that is also property of the abstraction, is also property of the object oriented programming. So what is abstraction in OOPS? So abstraction simply hiding the implementation details and showing only the functionality to the user. So this is a good benefit of the OOPS. That means the abstraction hide the implementation details, only it will give the functionality to the user. So for example, daily we are using the mobiles, daily we can sending the messages. Suppose we are sending a message, just we can simply type a text message and send that message, but we don't know what is the internal processing about the message. So just we can simply type and send a message, we don't know. That means here we can hiding the internal processing. Just we can use the typing a message and we can send that message. So consider another example. So daily we are driving a cars or bikes without knowing the internal details of the car and bike. That means how the engine works, how the brakes works. So simply to stop a car, we can apply the brakes. So we don't know about the internal details of the brake. Just we can simply apply the brakes. That means here we are hiding the implementation details. Only we can take the concept of the functionality, how the brakes will work. So the abstraction can be achieved by using the concepts of abstract classes and interfaces. So these concepts we can discuss in the later. So this is the basic idea about the abstraction. So abstraction is the better in OOPS concepts. Why? Because we can hiding the implementation details, only we can showing the functionality to the user. So this is the one of the principle of the object oriented programming. Next, we can see the another concept of the object oriented programming. So the next concept is encapsulation. So already we know what is the class. Class is a blueprint to create to develop an object. So what is encapsulation? Encapsulation means binding of data members and member functions into a single unit is called encapsulation. So already we know the class contains data members and methods. All the data members and member functions we can combine into a single unit is called encapsulation. So already we know the data members specifies the state or variables. Next, the member function specifies the behavior, that means methods. So here how we can achieve the encapsulation. So by achieving the encapsulation, the class variables access only within the class methods. So that means the class methods only access the class variables. Other classes cannot access the class variables. So we can implement the encapsulation concept using some access specifiers. So we can see what are the access specifiers we have, how we can use that access specifiers. So by using the concept of encapsulation, we can access the methods, we can access the class methods only in the, we can access the class variables by using only the class methods. So this is the basic idea about the encapsulation. Next principle we can see is the inheritance. So this is the main important principle of the object oriented programming. So that means one class properties can be used in another class. For example, consider a class A. The class A has the some member int A comma int B. So this class A contains some variables, then properties int A comma int B. So these class A properties can be used in another class, that is class B. So that means we can adapt the properties of the class A into the class B. So this is the simple concept of the inheritance. So here we have the two types of classes. One is the superclass or parent class or base class. Second class is subclass, child class or derived class. So suppose here class A is a superclass, then class B is the subclass. So the class A properties can be adapted into the class B. So suppose to adapt the properties of the class A and class B, we can use a keyword extends. So we can discuss what is extend in the further concepts. So we have the two types of classes. One is the superclass, base class and parent class. So when we call class A as the superclass, then class B is called as the subclass. Suppose class A is called as base class, then class B is called as the derived class. When we call the class A as the parent class, then class B is called as the child class. So that means one class properties can be used in another class. The main benefit of this inheritance concept in Java is the code reusability. So once we can create one class, so without using that properties, by using that properties we can develop another class. So simply the inheritance is the parent-child relationship among the classes. So when a class inherits the another class, it has the properties of base class and it has some new properties of its own class. So here class A has the two properties int A and int B, and in the class B also we can use our own properties, for example int C. So that means in the class B we can use class A and class B, int A, int B and int C in the class B. So this is the basic idea about the inheritance. So this is the basic. Later we can discuss what is inheritance, how we can achieve the inheritance concepts, what are the types of inheritance in the Java. So we can see that one later. Next, the last property of the object oriented programming is the polymorphism. So what is the polymorphism? So polymorphism is derived from two Greek words. One is the poly and second one is the morphs. The poly specifies the many and the morphs meaning is forms. That means simply the polymorphism is called many forms. So the polymorphism has two Greek words. One is the poly and the second one is the mops. So poly is the many and mops is specifies the forms. That means the polymorphism means many forms. That means what is polymorphism? So one task is performed by different ways is called a polymorphism. So for example, we want to travel from one place to another place. One person uses the car, another person uses the bike, another person follows the train, another person uses the aeroplane. So the concept is we can perform the traveling based on the different ways. So one task can be performed by different ways is called the polymorphism. So another example, consider a person. The person acts as a father, husband and employee at the same time. So this is also example of the polymorphism. So the polymorphism can be achieved using the concepts of method overloading and method overriding. So the method overloading and method overriding also discussed in the further concepts. So these are the basic idea about the principles of object oriented programming. So totally we have the principles of object oriented programming are classes, objects and abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism. So I will give the overall idea about what is class. So class is a blueprint to create a object. Next, what is object? Once we can create a class, we can create any number of objects. So the classes and objects both are interlinked. Next, third one is the abstraction. So abstraction, we can hide the implementation details. Only we can concentrate on the functionality of to the user. Next, encapsulation is the binding of data members and methods into a single unit is called the encapsulation. And inheritance specifies the how we can use the properties of one class into the another class. Next, why the polymorphism? So by using polymorphism, we can perform one task by many ways. So this is the basic idea about the principles of object oriented programming. So this is the concept of the principles of the object oriented programming. So in this session we discussed about the principles. So later session we can discuss the what is the history of the Java, how Java is evaluated. All these concepts we can discuss in the later session. Thank you.